What has been driving this record volume of dry powder collecting on books? Is it because of the fundraising being successful, or because there just aren't opportunities to deploy the money?
Yeah, well, I think, Lisa, it's really a twofold, which is, we're really seeing people being interested in investing in real assets. I think that has a real appeal to folks. I think people can get their hands around the concept of infrastructure assets. We're seeing a road or a tunnel or a bridge or a pipeline. And I think also it's been harder and harder to deploy assets because there's been so much capital, really accumulated heavily in Europe and now starting to really form in the U.S.
All right, but people have understood roads for a long time. Why now?
Well, I think it's really a function of there's really a need to really upgrade our infrastructure. We've seen, obviously, the challenges we have in the U.S. where our airports are really challenged around, looking and feeling like they have in Europe. But in Europe and in Asia, we've really seen, the social requirement around having upgraded infrastructure. And so, the public demand is there and people are accepting of that concept.
So where are you making money, actually, as an investor?
So for us, I think we're, if you think about Barry Sternlicht and the firm of Starwood, we're very focused on real assets. And Barry's thesis and the entire management team's thesis at Starwood is really around looking at assets that we can understand, we can develop, and we can own to the extent we make a loan that doesn't go our way. And so we're focused heavily on transportation. So transportation for us is a big focused on infrastructure.
Yeah, but what does that mean in terms of buying an airplane or lending
against aircraft is one of the things that we find is really interesting at the moment.
What kind of returns in that?
Well, you're going to get, mid-teens returns from our perspective. We use a little bit of leverage like you would in the CLO markets to deliver those returns. But there's really been a bifurcation. And one of the key factors around hard asset lending is European banks have always been the lender to that space. And Basel IV is going to make it more and more challenging for them to be able to lend into hard assets. And so we think, just like the private credit markets 7 or 8 years ago, 90% was in the bank markets. We think over the next 5 or 6 years, you're going to see that shift for all hard assets to move out of the European bank markets into private asset managers.
A lot of times when I talk with fund managers for infrastructure-focused funds, they talk about the energy sector and the shale boom.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about right now as we see the price of shale, or the price of crude just generally fall, and increasing numbers of bankruptcies. Are there opportunities, or are there landmines out there for you?
Well, the answer is both. There actually is both. And energy, is a really bad word in the financial markets these days, and it really has, created some opportunities. We call it baby with the bathwater opportunities, where energy itself has been challenged to find even any lenders in the upstream space. But energy itself is a very wide swath of types of assets. So what we do is we look for assets where there's contracted cash flows, there's assets that have real tangible net worth. Replacement value to us is something that we can price effectively, but there is money to be made in the infrastructure space around energy.
When it comes to some of these opportunities, how is there still value given how much money is coming into this space?
Yeah, I think that the money itself is very focused on traditional infrastructure.
Which is what?
Roads, bridges, and tunnels in Europe. And there isn't a lot to invest in because there hasn't been a lot of development here in the U.S. around roads, bridges, and tunnels. And so where you're seeing alternatives is either water. There may be water systems you can lend money against. There can be pipelines, LNG terminals, et cetera. There's lots of opportunities there.
How do you source these?
Well, we were lucky enough to purchase GE's energy lending team about a year ago. And that has been created a team. We have around 25 people on that team, have been doing energy lending, infrastructure lending for the last 25 years together. And so they help us source our opportunities. Do
you think that 2020 is going to be another record year for fundraising in this space?
I do.
Yeah?
Yes.
And where do you think most of it's going to go?
I think it will. I think the energy and infrastructure markets will be a big focus. I think private credit, which this is kind of moves into, will also be a big focus, as we saw in last part of your show. Is it's becoming more and more popular with even retail investors.